I wanted to come back to our minds lying to us, right? All of us. So when I was thinking about making this video, I was thinking, well, what should I include? Like, should I just list a bunch of ways the mind lies to each human? And I've done that. And maybe I'll put one of my pieces of writing, the top 20 ways your mind is lying to you or your brain is lying to you. Maybe I'll put that up under the video on the Facebook page. And even a recent post just from a week or so ago, I talked about how evolution affects our perception, right? How unbeknownst to us, we find people more attractive because of cues. And weird cues, like only seeing them for a second and we're like, whoa, we need to do a double take. That's evolution changing our behavior. There's probably 100 ways our brains lie to us. Like psychology just keeps showing over and over and over and over again that our brains are lying to us. But in a podcast that I was listening to recently, the podcast is actually called You're Not So Smart, and the episode was an episode with the psychologist Julia Shaw, who talks about false memories. And she tells a story in the book, because he's interviewing her, but she had just written a book about planting false memories in people. And she tells the story in the podcast, but she kind of abbreviates it, and then he kind of picks up from her writing in the text. And I'm adapting that a little bit, actually, a little more. In the podcast, Julia Shaw says one of her professors, he used a piece of paper, and he said, this piece of paper is reality. Like, this is everything that is happening in the present moment, this piece of paper. And if you fold it in half, half is what we can perceive, because our senses aren't exactly like every other animal's senses, which perceive a different reality than us, right? So human perception accounts for this much of what is reality. And then I fold it in half again, and this is what we actually paid attention to, because there's all kind of things happening in my realm of senses that I'm likely not paying attention to at the moment. And then the professor folded it in half again, and this is what is filtered, like the reality that is filtered through our personal mind. So, I may see things very differently than you see things just because of my history, my personal, wiring of my brain that then colors my perception, right? And then the brain makes memory traces called engrams, right? Which amounts to this now. I folded the paper in half again, and that's what the brain actually encodes. The part of our perception that is encoded into memory. And then this is what we can actually recall. So you take that whole piece of paper, like you see how big this is right now. You take that whole piece of paper is what reality is, and we're only seeing a tiny piece of it, right? So to me, this is kind of mind-blowing. And obviously she's using this analogy because her expertise is false memories, that we're not even remembering things the way they actually happened, which I agree with 100%. But not only are we not remembering things the way they happen, we're not seeing things the way they happen. Our personal perception skews things. So this, to me, this is like the big way our brain is lying to us. And then there's all of the, distortions of reality. But the biggest one is confabulation. And basically what that says is our mind creates stories for what we do, the behavior that we exhibit, which was actually caused by some other part of the brain that we're unaware of, often for evolutionary reasons. So the point I really want to emphasize in this video is that, again, our minds are lying to us. Reality is not as we see it. And we should loosen our attachment to our perception of reality, which is the argument I make in my last post. And that can breed compassion for other people. I'm really just trying to get all of us myself included, to soften attachment to perceptions. One of the other things that I noted in the notes when I was, designing or kind of putting together what I wanted to cover in this class is that there isn't a truth that we're able to perceive. Like when I talk to students, one of the things I talk about is my belief. I'm not saying it's necessarily accurate, but I believe, and I'm pretty attached to this belief, unfortunately for me, my belief is that I like to say there is no truth, but what is more accurate is humans are incapable of perceiving the truth. We get pieces of it, but we can't see the truth. So in that regard, there is no truth that we're capable of perceiving. So instead of, being so convinced of our own truths and of other people's truths, we could just, relax and take a breath and focus on being present and not attached to any of our perceptions. And with that, we'll be closer to becoming Buddhas.